Imagine this. You're draped in silk that costs more than a peasant's yearly wage. Rubies glint at your throat. Kings whisper secrets in your ear between the sheets. By morning, those same men might watch you flogged in the streets. Welcome to your life as a medieval courtesan. You wielded influence over the most powerful men in Europe. But here's the question that haunted every silk-draped night. Who really held the power? You or the men who used you? You're about to discover the brutal truth behind the jewels and the poetry. Let's set the scene. Venice, 1570. You're not just any woman selling her body. You're Veronica Franco, and you've clawed your way to the top of a world most people can't even imagine. Your salon buzzes with the greatest minds of the Renaissance. Poets debate philosophy while diplomats whisper state secrets. Your bed has hosted cardinals, merchants who own half the Mediterranean, and nobles whose bloodlines stretch back to Charlemagne. You don't just lie there and take it. You choose your clients. You set your prices. You live like nobility. The silk feels real against your skin. The gold weighs heavy in your hands. When you speak, powerful men listen. When you write poetry, it gets published alongside the greatest writers of your age. You've transcended the brothel and entered the palace. But here's what the history books won't tell you about one famous courtesan whose end was nothing like her beginning. The higher you climb, the more dangerous your fall becomes. And the system already has you marked. Those church statutes passed in 1571 didn't mince words. You were forbidden to wear silk, jewels, gold, or silver. The law literally tried to strip the glamour from your skin. The same men who showered you with these luxuries in private demanded laws to humiliate you in public. Here's the irony that would make you laugh if it didn't hurt so much. Courtesans were regularly fined for violating these sumptuary laws. The same week a cardinal gifted you emerald earrings, city officials would fine you for wearing them. Your lovers paid for your silks, then the state collected penalties for your beauty. In the bedchamber, you were a goddess. In the streets, you were prey. Noble wives saw you as both threat and scapegoat. Their husbands' desires were your fault, never theirs. The poetry salons and intellectual discourse weren't just entertainment. They were survival. You had to be more than beautiful. You had to be irreplaceable. Because the moment you became ordinary, you became disposable. Every letter you received could be a love note or a death warrant. Every gift could be a token of affection or a bribe to keep you quiet. Every whispered secret made you more valuable and more vulnerable at the same time. But the rules were written by men who could rewrite them whenever you got too comfortable. The church called women like you devils who tempted men to disgrace. But when the disgrace came, guess who got punished? Not the cardinals who visited your bed, not the merchants who funded your lifestyle. You. But here's what the silk and poetry couldn't hide. The moment you stepped outside your silk-lined world, reality hit like a fist to the face. Behind closed doors, you were divine. But in daylight, you became the city's scapegoat. The same hands that caressed you in private pointed accusingly in public. Here's the legal reality they never mentioned in those poetry salons. You couldn't own property. Not really. Everything you accumulated could be seized, stolen, or simply taken back by the men who gave it to you. Your safety wasn't guaranteed by law. It was a privilege that could be revoked at any moment. You lived at the mercy of men who saw you as both essential and expendable. Noble wives watched you with a hatred that burned hotter than their husband's lust. They couldn't touch their cheating spouses, but they could destroy you. Preachers thundered that courtesans were hell's accomplices, yet the only souls condemned were yours. When those men fell from grace, who paid the price? Not the cardinal who visited your bed 3 times a week, not the merchant who funded your silk dresses. You. The same men who praised your wit in private could denounce your morals in public without blinking. You performed for audiences that applauded your talent while plotting your destruction. The moral justification for your existence was as twisted as everything else. Society claimed you were necessary to prevent corruption. You absorbed the sins of respectable men, so they could maintain their respectability. Every night brought the possibility of violence. Every dawn brought the possibility of exile. Every season brought new laws designed to strip away whatever dignity you'd managed to accumulate. You were walking a tightrope over an abyss, and the men holding the rope were the same ones shaking it. If you're still watching, you're hooked, and that's exactly how we've got you. Don't miss the next trap. Subscribe now. But here's where it gets interesting. Some courtesans found ways to cheat death, at least temporarily. The smart ones negotiated pensions from aging patrons, a kind of retirement plan wrapped in legal documents. For a glorious moment, it looked like they'd beaten the system. Financial security, protection from the streets, a future that didn't end in exile or worse. The irony, a single quill stroke could erase it overnight. Patron dies, his heirs contest the will, political winds shift. Your protector falls from grace. The pension that promised freedom became another chain around your neck. A handful even married into lower nobility, became respectable. For a few years, they lived like proper wives with proper titles, but respectability was a costume they could never fully wear. Whispers followed them into drawing rooms. Tainted blood, the other wives would murmur. Their past was a stain that no amount of holy water could wash clean. The system was rigged from the start, but some learned to play it anyway. The lucky ones bought themselves time. The unlucky ones discovered that time was all they could afford. Now imagine this. Veronica Franco, the woman who dined with cardinals and debated philosophy with the greatest minds of Venice, died in poverty and obscurity. The same hands that once penned elegant poetry begged for scraps. The same lips that whispered secrets to powerful men pleaded for mercy from church authorities. That's the payoff I promised you. The famous courtesan whose end was nothing like her beginning. Franco's downfall came swiftly and brutally. The Inquisition accused her of practicing witchcraft. Her influential lovers vanished like smoke. Her literary friends found pressing business elsewhere. The salon that once buzzed with intellectual discourse fell silent. She was exiled, stripped of her wealth, left to die forgotten. But Franco wasn't unique. She was the rule, not the exception. Let me tell you about the other side of the coin. Tullia de Aragona lived to be 67. She secured papal protection, published poetry under her own name, and died in her own bed, surrounded by books instead of creditors. She played the game better than almost anyone. But even Tullia's victory was hollow. Her protection came at a cost of constant performance. Every poem, every letter, every conversation was calculated to maintain her precarious position. She lived in a gilded prison, free only as long as she never tested the bars. Franco's collapse looks even more devastating when you realize that survival was possible. Tullia proved it could be done, which makes Franco's fall from literary salon to Inquisition trial all the more heartbreaking. Real courtesans were poisoned by jealous rivals, imprisoned when their political patrons fell from grace, abandoned the moment their beauty faded or their usefulness expired. The lucky ones died quickly. The unlucky ones lived long enough to watch everything they'd built crumble. Here's the brutal math that governed your world. You had influence without true power, luxury without security, fame without protection. The church's punishment was swift and merciless when your time came. One day, you're hosting cardinals in your silk-draped chambers. The next, you're being dragged through the streets as an example of moral corruption. The same religious authorities who quietly enjoyed your services publicly condemned your existence. Exile was often the kindest fate you could hope for. At least exile meant you were still breathing. The streets that once welcomed your jeweled carriages became hunting grounds, where former clients might spit in your face, or worse. Recognition that once meant respect now meant danger. A courtesan in Florence was accused of passing state secrets between lovers. She hadn't, but the accusation was enough. Her house was seized, her jewels confiscated. She was found floating in the Arno 3 days later. The men who actually passed those secrets, they attended her funeral and shook their heads sadly at the corruption of women. The final irony cuts deeper than any blade. Even the most successful courtesans were performing in a script they never wrote. You memorized your lines perfectly. You played your role flawlessly. You believed you were the star of your own story. But you were never more than a supporting character in someone else's drama. The influence you wielded was borrowed. The power you felt was an illusion. The security you built was a house of cards in a windstorm. When the wind blew, and it always blew eventually, you discovered that everything you thought you owned actually owned you. Your lovers moved on to younger women. Your political connections found new entertainments. Your literary friends published new books that never mentioned your name. The world that revolved around you kept spinning as if you'd never existed. They created the rules that would destroy you, while enjoying the privileges that elevated you. The contradiction wasn't accidental. It was the entire point. So here's the answer to that question from the beginning. Who really held the power? Never you. Not once, not ever. You held influence. Power's beautiful, dangerous cousin. But influence without true authority is just a longer rope to hang yourself with. Believing you had power was the deadliest illusion. Those who played it safe survived. Those who believed the mask perished. But they all died, eventually. Forgotten by the men who once claimed to love them. Erased by the society that once celebrated them. You mastered the role, but the curtain never rose for you. The applause was always for the men who wrote the play. So there's your brutal truth. She was both queen and pawn. Loved and loathed. Celebrated and condemned. But she was never free. Picture this final scene. Veronica Franco stands before the Inquisition tribunal in 1580. Her poems, once celebrated in the finest salons, are read aloud as evidence of her corruption. The words that made powerful men weep now damn her to exile. The men in the gallery watch her fall, with the same fascination they once watched her rise. Her destruction is their entertainment, her humiliation, their absolution. She who once chose her lovers now has no choice at all. The silk is gone, the jewels are seized, the influence has evaporated like morning mist. What remains is a woman stripped of everything, except the knowledge that she was never anything more than a beautiful lie the world told itself about power. The game was rigged from the beginning, and the house always wins. If you want more stories about power, illusion, and the brutal cost of survival in worlds designed to destroy you, subscribe, because history is full of people caught between influence and powerlessness, and their stories are darker and more fascinating than anything Hollywood could invent. Next time, we're exploring another group that thought they held power, but discovered they were just more expensive puppets. Trust me, you won't see it coming. And if you thought the courtesan's fall was brutal, wait until you see why it sucked to be a royal food taster. That story will make this one look almost merciful.